As far as you're concerned, what is society's elephant in the room? This is actually only now being studied, and obviously it's a hotbed of controversy. In a laboratory we can create class difference randomly, but the consistent result is those who are given a better start believe they were the captains of their own destiny and never attribute their success to their head start. Essentially, first world countries are born on third base and love to brag about how much smarter, harder working they are compared to the people at bat. Our level of wealth is unsustainable if we give all workers everywhere fair wages and safe working conditions. Our Western happiness depends on other people's suffering. This is the balance of the system. Robots might change the balance, but people seem to ignore the question, why keep the workers alive when they don't need them anymore? Factory owners aren't going to pay civilization to sustain a population that they have no use for. To give an example, before my nan got sectioned because of her vascular dementia, I remember speaking to my mother about what was happening. I remember saying that if this was in old times, they would have considered her insane and sent her to a mental asylum. She passed a few years back, and I think it may be one of the worst things I've ever witnessed in real life. At least in our modern society we have much more understanding and treat these people with dignity, worded loosely because some of the care homes she went to want closing down and tried in a court of law. Sorry for rambling on, but people with Alzheimer's and dementia must have had horrible deaths in old times. No doubt it existed back then too. Lots of things that would be considered mental illness nowadays were normal and didn't prevent you from functioning in society in previous era. Something like ADHD would never have been a problem 100 years ago when you worked in a field instead of on your computer. Alcoholism was rampant but socially acceptable. You wouldn't be fired for showing up drunk anywhere because as long as you did your job, no harm no foul. Antisocial PD was just normal aggressive behavior for lots of people, and still is in some parts of the world. Standards are just way higher today because of mass media telling people what is not normal, and reduced need for labor in general, allowing employers to be picky. I'd say the things that have truly become much worse are narcissism, anxiety and depression. First 1B, C of social media, second and third B, C of these higher standards for functionality that encourage people who can't meet them to just drop out of society and give up. I would say the former. I don't know a single person within my age group that has not suffered from a nervous breakdown or does not suffer from some sort of suicidal idealization. Just within the last 3 years, it would not be any sort of exaggeration for me to say that I have lost over 6 of my friends to suicides, and if I am going to be honest, the only reason I personally haven't come to the same conclusion regarding my own poor mental state is because I am too busy most of the time caring for the people close to me who are teetering on the edge. I'm sure that there's some measure of increased reporting that plays into the optic, but it seems entirely unsurprising to me that a society that has totally done away with any notion of fundamental, objective meaning and purpose in the universe in exchange for a nihilistic outlook on existence as a meaningless, cosmic accident, especially when the entirety of human existence to that point included some kind of religious, spiritual dimension, would end up with pervasive psychological problems. Without getting into a debate on the merits of a particular religion, it seems self-evident that humans are, for lack of a better term, programmed to desire that kind of meaning and purpose, and nearly every aspect of society in developed nations seems designed to frustrate that impulse. This is a big one. I would also throw in the algorithm. Everyone knows about it. Nobody really acknowledges, but we all know that curates what we see online as far as recommendations and ads go. It's fascinating, and creepy, how when using someone else's computer, phone to see what kind of ads they get, what YouTube videos they get recommended, what TikToks pop up on their feed, or what Snapchat Discover thinks they like. It has a profile of you of what it thinks you like. And now we all have to be careful about what we search on Google, cause it might give the algorithm a bad idea and start suggesting weird things that aren't a reflection of you, which is dystopian enough. I can't look up anything about my favorite anime outside of incognito because otherwise it starts giving me really creepy anime video game ads that I 0% interest in for like the next 2 weeks. Aside from Reddit, I don't have any social media accounts. People told me I was overreacting to the issues that I had with it, until I recounted an interview I read that featured a guy who helped to create Facebook. Long story short, he said that one of his biggest regrets was his participation in creating the platform, because they'd created the platform taking advantage of human nature. The algorithms were built to prey on people's weaknesses, self-esteem issues, and need to be liked and validated. He also said that he feared for the future and mental state of kids growing up on social media. That last part hit me hard. Social media is awful, and frankly there needs to be more stringent regulation by platforms and government. It's been used far too much to spread lies, misinformation, and hate. I listen to how it affects young people through the eyes of my mother, a middle school teacher. It is used extensively by teenagers, who use it as a significant extension of their social lives. And while it would probably be fine if it was just used as a sort of digital yearbook, it is not. It is nothing more than a way for students to reach other students. For good and bad, it has devolved into nothing more than a fantasy machine, showing people how great the lives of others are without showing any of the problems or struggles people face to get to those places. All you see is that the karma kials with their 2 little perfect blonde-haired kids in their perfect clothes just got to spend the day at the beach in Fiji, and you're stuck slaving away at Drone Corp doing some bullshit job. And where there was once discussion, disagreement, and growth, there is now echo chambers. This reply is going to get buried, but I learned this the hard way. I didn't think my drinking habits were a problem. I'd have a couple glasses of wine at night to wind down while I watched Netflix or played video games. Sometimes I'd have a bit more. Other times maybe just 1 glass. If I went out with friends I'd have maybe 3 or 4 drinks. In an effort to save some money I decided to stop, and after a couple days I actually had withdrawal symptoms, like scary ones, shaking, extreme anxiety, extreme insomnia, intrusive thoughts. It was fucking awful. I did a little research into it and apparently withdrawal is very common for anyone considered a heavy drinker, which, if you're a woman like me, is just 8 drinks or more per week, 15 or more for men. That probably doesn't seem like all that much to your average person. I mean, 8 drinks a week is your nightly glass of wine with dinner and 1 extra on the weekends. Also, once I stopped, my skin looks insanely good, I sleep better, and I have more energy. Red wine is good for you, my ass. I don't think I'll ever go back to it. One of the reasons why amid the pandemic in the US liquor stores were not closed, and there was panic buying it would, not due to being bored at home but because actual alcohol addiction is bad and people consume huge amount of alcohol if addicted. They decided not to close liquor stores because the implication would mean hospitals etc. would be overloaded with detoxing alcoholics in withdrawal, dangerous and requiring medical supervision, and that was going to put a huge strain on the resources. Got a friend in public health who explained all this regarding their state's decision to close then not close them. They were part of the team that got briefed after a few hospital staff veterans were like, no, do not put that in the mix. Absolutely agree. Even take the example of Matthew Perry's appearance in the recent Friends reunion. The man looked like the walking embodiment of the US opioid crisis. He had clearly lost some teeth, and maybe experienced some bone loss. Upper lip, you could see the way it moved differently, which is really common with opiate addiction because you don't feel the tooth pain until way too late. I think I heard he was prescribed opioids for a skiing accident and went downhill from there. If it affects someone so wealthy and high profile like that, yet is still unspoken about publicly, or even looked down on like it's a character flaw rather than a medical problem, then it's the elephant in the room. At the same time, I don't believe opioids are universally bad. I think effective pain relief is direly needed by many people. Were they overprescribed in the past? Yes. Should we treat people in severe pain like criminals and tell them to take ibuprofen, which has its own painful side effects, when they ask for help? Absolutely not. There needs to be a solution that helps people and keeps people safe from addiction. In politics, Aristotle places democracy lower than several other forms of government. He considers aristocracy, defined as rule of the best, to be better. He considers monarchy to be the ideal form, specifically in the case where the monarch is most concerned with her subjects' well-being, rather than him, herself. There are bad forms of each as well, oligarchy and monarchy. I tend to agree, but only in a vacuum. How can we ever know with full certainty that anyone in these positions will put the interests of others first? Absolutely. I just finished reading Animal Farm and 1984 for the first time on the recommendation of my partner after seeing many people I know supporting the concept of fascism and totalitarianism. It blows my mind how caught up people get with cherry-picked details that they completely ignore the bigger picture within the ideology. The strangest part to me, and I'm fully open to someone explaining it from their perspective, are the people who support this ideology are not the ones who would benefit from the changes at all. I don't want to sound like a boomer, but I seriously think general media addiction is being overlooked. I know everyone talks about it, but I don't think anyone ever thinks of their specific media habits as problematic. I went through a period of depression, anxiety that in retrospect was almost entirely caused by the fact that I would come home and immediately jump on social media, YouTube, whatever, and veg out for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours every day. More on weekends. I felt entertained because I was getting dopamine hits, but in reality I felt bored and listless anytime I wasn't on the computer. The treatment of people with disabilities in social settings, whether this is in an educational environment, a work environment, or just a general social environment, I always have felt other or have been socially treated differently, as people are afraid to say things or seem biased. Because this comment has gained some traction, I'd like to share a video of my favorite blind comedian and folk singer from the band The Young Uns, David Eagle, at Hot Water Comedy Club. A lot of parents expect their kids to be little carbon copies of themselves and follow out the dreams that they had, and respecting that your kids need space and aren't little science experiments like, oh, what would have happened if I pursued that job instead? For some reason a lot of parents have the mindset that your kids are not to be recognized as a person with a mind, and a lot more could be said. I've often had the thought that credit cards in America are just an economic buffer to postpone economic crashes and keep people from rioting. Because think about it, if you went to work a minimum wage job and came back with not enough food to eat, your well-being would be directly on the line and people would start demanding higher wages and rioting like the French. But instead, they're told you're just lazy, get a credit card and pay it off like a good consumer, so people end up charging things that really ought to be standard life expenses. When all this debt piles up and the entire economy goes tits up, the economists all come out in droves to explain it away as some natural occurrence, like a hurricane or a tornado, completely glossing over the fact that these economic crashes keep happening because a capitalistic economy can't sustain itself when the average person can't afford to buy the goods being produced. When the average citizen must resort to debt to keep the economy strong, your economy is bad, and you should feel bad. Sorry, this ended up being a long reply, but I think it will be helpful to many people. Selfishness is necessary for survival, but there are, generally speaking, two different types. Getting something for yourself no matter what it takes, even if you have to lie, cheat, or steal to get it. Other people's well-being doesn't matter as long as you get what you want. Making sure you are taking care of all of your needs so you can feel good, be healthy, and maintain a good life for yourself. In this way you make sure you feel good and have a healthy amount of mental and physical strength and energy. This then allows you to be at your best and, therefore, give the greatest help to others. You will have enough energy and clarity of mind to help lift others up and be a strength for someone else who is going through a temporary difficulty. I learned that the definition of the word hero is strength for two. Though it is true that many people are only nice to others because they expect something in return, I like to believe that most people are nice to others simply for the fact that being authentically nice to others feels good. That's a reward in itself. Think back to when you were a young child, or consider times when you felt truly relaxed and happy while interacting with another person in a friendly way. Do you remember the happiness you felt with sharing a toy or cooperating with someone else to play a game, having a mutually satisfying conversation? Or what about how good it feels to pet an animal? Both types of selfishness exist at the same time, but it isn't so simple as having some people who are selfish to get something while other people are selfish to be a better help to others. Both types of selfishness exist in each person. Which type a person uses most of the time and in which situations depends on what that person believes about themselves, other people, the world, and what the meaning of life is. This leads to how people treat each other. Each individual interaction feeds into defining the whole of the society and culture you live in. Trends in mistreating certain types of people become widespread, and we all allow it to happen. It's everyone's fault, even mine. If you believe that people are only nice to you because they want something from you, then you will be rude and condescending toward them. Or you will fake being thankful and make plans to manipulate them so you get something from them too. In this scenario, you're behaving no better than the other person. Two peas in a pod. If you believe that it's because it feels good to be nice, then you will also be nice toward them. Both of you will feel good, simply wonderful for both of you. If the other person is just trying to get something from you and you believe that they are simply being nice, then they will learn the true reward for kindness is the happiness that comes from it when they don't get anything else in return. Sure, they'll be insulted or angry at first, but someday, hopefully, they will see the beauty of the joy that comes from just being kind. Here, you've planted a seed for them. We do tend to just go along with things that are convenient and give us a sense of comfort. That's because in order to be a healthy human, we need a sense of equilibrium, a foundation of safety and stability even if it isn't really healthy. You train your mind and body to believe it needs certain things to be safe and free to function without fear. An alcoholic needs to start their day with a couple of drinks to get a buzz that makes them feel steady on their feet and able to think again. This is a physiological part of the disease, or illness. After drinking heavily over a long period of time, the body depends on the substance to be able to function normally. This is why it's important for a person quitting any substance to do it with a doctor's help. If they quit cold turkey, their body will go into shock. Some people die from quitting alcohol or drugs cold turkey. Their body can't handle it. It believes that if it doesn't get it, that it will die and will stop functioning. This is the same, to a lesser degree, for a person who drinks coffee every morning and won't do anything until after they've had their second cup. The minds and bodies of both people truly won't work well until they've had the substance they've trained their body to need. I used to smoke a pack of cigarettes, 20 cigarettes, a day. Now, I smoke between 4 to 7 cigarettes a day. Whenever I stop smoking, my body reacts badly. I sleep most of the day and can only stay up for about an hour at a time before the overwhelming tiredness comes back and my eyes close. I will fall asleep sitting up. I've made it to 5 days, but then was so sick of sleeping all of the time that I started smoking again. Everything was fine after that. I'm slowly weaning my body's dependence on the cigarettes, though I hate the smell and how it makes my throat feel. This is the same for anything a person says they absolutely need to have in order to feel happy or comfortable in their own skin, such as playing a video game for a certain amount of time, reading their social media, running 3 miles, working out, drinking a glass of water before every meal. This is true for both unhealthy and healthy habits we all choose for ourselves. If you believe you need it, your mind and body believe you and it becomes true for you. As for putting up with dictators and other screwed up situations, yes, we do that sometimes. We will reason our way out of fighting against certain things to keep some sort of balance in our lives, even if we know there's something wrong about it. True, we have to consider self-preservation above all things. If we don't exist, we will never be able to do anything in the future when the right opportunity comes for us. As much as we'd like to attack what is unjust and get rid of it, we still need to get ourselves in the right mindset in order to do it right, with the least amount of self-harm or harm to others in the process. This takes time and good planning. Besides, many times, the unjust and abusive ones always end up destroying themselves in one way or another. That's the nature of those types of behavior. You always get what you give. You always attract what you are. But what if we could find a way to save them too, while making our own situation safer away from them? Just a little something to think about.